Hello, hockey, basketball, and soccer fans. My name is David. Thought I would start this video at either 3 on the afternoon of the Tuesday, 2nd of January 2023, North American Eastern Time. Thought I would try to respond to a particular comment about Marner. I do plan to provide link ASCP. And so it's about whether Marner is the biggest disappointment in terms of the core four of the Leafs. On that verdict, it's not clear in what way. How is Marner the most disappointing? I'm not saying that I've liked everything that Marner has done this season, but again, is it disappointment? Is it that? What I'm going to do is try to investigate. I mean, in terms of various metrics here. So I'm going to go to overall in regular season play following last preseason. So I'm going to see if Marner. We'll see about the top forward here. So I thought I would just, not so much go in terms of points per game or whatever, but just more about the stats. Okay. So on point per game figures, which are given round to the nearest hundredth of a point, hundredth of a point, unless others indicate. So in terms of the lowest among overall this season, for excluding preseason play, John Tavares definitely comes last among the core four with 0.91 average points per game. So 11 goals among 31 points over 34 games. Marner is second last. Tavares has the worst. Had the worst plus minus at 0 among the core four from regular season from October to last month Eastern Time. So yeah, so that there, and on thread. So Marner got minus +3, second highest among core four members. Marner 1.12 points per game, second lowest. Matthews and Nylander had put up more points. So in October, excluding preseason play, Nylander at an average of 1.44 points per game had averaged more points per game, had the highest average. Marner at 0.89, the lowest. That was in October. Marner was tied with Matthews at -1 in terms of worst plus minus. John Tavares, a +2. So now I'm going to go to November. In November, Marner was tied on points with Nylander at 1.25 on average. So 15 points over 12 games in each of those cases, 6 goals among those points. John Tavares was tied with Kyle Yarncrook for, on average, 2/3 of a point per game. So via 8 points over 12 games. Kyle Yarncrook having scored 4 goals, Tavares half as many. 12 games, that is. So yeah. So Marner wasn't the worst. I mean, among the core four members, he was actually was tied with Matthews and Tavares. It's tied with Matthews and Tavares. So yeah. So in terms of, let me just see for the plus and minus. In terms of plus minus, Nylander had the best plus minus among the core four members at +3. All right, so I'm going to head over to what happened during regular season play from last October to last November Eastern Time. So of those forwards, Neander had the highest average of points per game at 1.33 via 28 points over 21 games. Tavares the lowest at 0.95, 20 points over 21 games. So in terms of the highest plus minus, Nylander was number one. Was at highest at +3. Tavares +2, the second highest. Matthews and Marner were tied on plus minus and average points per game, respectively at -1 and 1.10. Each of them with 23 points over 21 games. So what about during last month Eastern Time? On that metric, Matthews had the highest average points per game at the 1.75 and plus minus at +6. Marner came third at 1.15 plus minus 1.15 points per game on average and a +4. Neander and Tavares were tied on plus minus. On plus minus, Nylander and Tavares were tied at -2. Nylander with 1.54 average points per game, Tavares 0.85. So what about since that shutout win over the Pens, 7-0? So since following that, Matthews has averaged 1.5 points per game and a plus minus of +1. Nylander and Marner have Nylander 1.1 points per game, Marner 2/3 of a point per game, Tavares 1/3 of a point per game. Each of them has played 6 games, so Tavares had the worst among the core 4 forwards during 6 games. Each of those core 4 had played 6 games during that losing streak, during that 6-game skid, during which the Leafs had only managed to win 1 game. So 1/3 of a point per game. So that's going to be the case. So there's a -8 for John Tavares, and 2 goals of his points during that time span. Marner 1 goal of 4 points over that time span, and a -4. Nylander 2 goals among his 8 points over that time span. Matthews 6 goals among his 9 points over that time span. So it's a mixed bag. Is Marner the worst? Plus minus, definitely not, because Tavares is the worst among players who during that losing streak had averaged at least half point per game. Well, Marner definitely was the worst. The problem is, it's defining what is most disappointing, because it's difficult to know. There is no doubt, however, that all those forwards have been disappointing. And I thought I would do now is to go to that before I wrap things up. I thought I would do is in terms of the World Juniors Canadian team, which ended up losing 3-2 in regulation to its Czech counterpart. Thought I would do is do a little bit of a comparison between that World Junior team, the Canadian World Junior team, that ended up losing 3-2 in losing that game in that quarterfinal, the tournament over, and the Raptors team that had lost a 2023 play-in game in April to the Chicago Bulls. So during that relevant episode, CTV Toronto Morning Eastern Time show, Breakfast TV, he made a bunch of claims about the Raptors, including, but I only give it 2, the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl, who at that time might have chosen to walk into unrestricted free agency a couple months from then. That the season for the Raptors had been an embarrassment. That players and coaches on the Raptors had taking turns checking out. Turns having checked out. In other words, just like they need, whatever that is. Um, that at no point going into the then most recent trade deadline had the Raptors front office had any business doing what it had ended up doing, and that instead said front office, figuratively speaking, quote, should have thrown a stick of dynamite, unquote, into that roster. That Raptors team that had ended up losing that close game to the Chicago Bulls had, quote, no bench, unquote, and that fault for that had been, quote, on Masai and Bobby, unquote, referring to President Ujiri and GM Webster. There had been there had been very little togetherness or imagination. There had been very little togetherness, togetherness on the court, unquote. And the fault for that had rested with Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and their then teammates. That said loss had been the beginning of the end of what Cicero had claimed had been, quote, a group failure, unquote. Alright, so I'm just going to that Sweden game there. So I'm going to watch that, rewatch that a little bit later. Yeah, so well, and lastly, Cicero had claimed to have wanted to know whether Kawhi Leonard, who had been on the Raptors 2019 NBA championship team, had made, quote, everyone look like a genius, unquote. And that Cicero claimed to have thought that more people on the Raptors organization had been, quote, smarter than, unquote, they would end up having been. So I'm going to go into, so how many of those points apply to the loss by Canada's World Junior team? So I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, where do I go there? So what I'm going to do is, alright. Alright, so let me just go to here. Alright, so I'm just going to go to, where did I go here? So I'm just going to go there, and claims from, came to an end because of bad balance. It was more than that. It was that they didn't score in regulation. They just didn't. We've had that. Let's see here. Alright, so I'm going to go to that loss. So by Canada's World Junior team. So, yeah. Yeah, so embarrassing. There has to be big change in the roster building philosophy for the next tournament. Too many role guys, not enough game breakers. Well, that was the problem with the Raptors. Too many role guys, not enough game breakers. That was, again, the good, I think there is indeed that claim by Cicero that figuratively speaking, the Raptors front office going into the 2023 NBA trade deadline, quote, should have thrown a stick of dynamite, unquote, into that roster. Well, I'd say that Hockey Canada should, figuratively speaking, throw a stick of dynamite into the selection committee responsible for choosing World Juniors rosters. After all, the loss was a loss, and the lack of a finish didn't end up doing Canadian men's team, Canadian World Junior team, much good. Fell behind early and never came back. Never came completely back. Tied the game up, and that was it. A loss in regulation. So 3 wins and 2 losses, all in regulation. I'm not sure what that means in terms of the finish of Canada's World Junior team. I'll have to look that up in a moment, but there's no doubt that there need to be. All right, so it's going to. All right, so it's going to go. They're going to do it as well. So I'll later. So the main thing is, so yeah, game breakers, need more of those. So it's time to overhaul the selection committee responsible for selecting these World Juniors players. Because obviously, not enough game breakers. And ultimately, that hurt. It hurt in the Sweden game. Sweden went up 2-0. Well, Sweden went, Swedish World Junior team was knocked out, and I believe it was in overtime. I have to check the game up and do that. But anyway, there's no doubt whatsoever. Embarrassment. I'll just have to check to see that Sweden-Switzerland game. What happened here? All right, what I'm going to do is I was going to check that on TSN, whatever. I'm going to have to check that out. But in any case, Sweden ended up shutting out the Canadian team, and then let's see. I'll have to just, to confirm that there. Anyway, there's no doubt that the Leafs have, so I'm going to just conclude here that the Leafs have a rather important game coming up, so that's 17:45 of this video. And, yeah. No doubt it's going to be a rather important set of games coming up here. The Leafs have won just one of their last 6, and have earned just a quarter of the available points. 1 win and 1 overtime loss. And yes, it's good that either Samsonov has cleared waivers. I mean, at least there's a decision on that, and that means that frees up a roster spot. And whatever Samsonov decides to do doesn't matter, because he doesn't deserve another chance at the NHL level. And Carlo Koliakovo, hours ago on First of 1050, TSN 1050 Radio's morning Eastern Time show, claimed that Samsonov had not deserved another chance to play at the NHL level whilst under contract with the Leafs. So that's going to be all to do for now. If you like this video, please make sure to click that like button. If you want to subscribe to my channel, at least so we can have a chance of getting more timely notifications. I do encourage you to do so. It is optional, however. If you also click the notification bell, you will receive more timely notification of videos, whether short or longer form ones that I put out. I try to put out videos, whether short or long ones, at least every other week. On that note, I'm going to say, go Leafs go Raptors go Toronto FC go. And with respect to Canadian national teams, including the World Juniors and the under-18 women's one, scheduled to get underway in a few days' time in Switzerland, go Canada go.